Is this on? Yeah. Good afternoon. My name is Ghoncheh Tazmini, and it's a pleasure to be back at the World Public Forum and to have the opportunity to present the chapter, Genuine Dialogue Requires Not Only Talking, but a Great Deal of Listening. In this chapter, I engage in a conversation with Professor Fred Dallmayr, who I'm sure many will agree is a truly multidimensional thinker befitting the needs of a multicultural era. And that explains why this chapter is a celebration of diversity. In our conversation, you'll find a consistent thread, specifically respect for other ways of living and self-governance. The strength of this chapter is that while it is theoretically grounded, it is also a policy-relevant exchange. What is remarkable about the chapter is that although it was compiled over a year ago, it anticipated many of the gridlocks that we see today, particularly in the Arab world. Specifically, the fact that democratic revolutions do not automatically beget democratic institutions. In post-authoritarian Arab societies, the prospects for democracy remain unclear. Events have shown us that there is no global uniformity when it comes to the task of modernizing political structures. The chapter accounts for this predicament by arguing that a one-size-fits-all path to democracy does not permit a clear understanding of internal change. The non-Western world did not experience the Renaissance, the Reformation, or the Enlightenment, so modernity cannot possibly mean the same thing in non-Western societies. Professor Dallmayr underscores the need for a broader frame of reference that represents socio-political development as the interaction of universal value patterns and specific cultural codes. He advocates a broader cognitive space to allow for the emergence of homegrown or multiple modernities. History has taught us that modernity cannot be borrowed or imposed, but that it is an end one moves towards only on the basis of dialogue and collective agreement. This brings us to the role of Islam in democracy, which is also addressed in the chapter. The political landscape in the post-revolutionary Arab world is comprised overwhelmingly of traditionalist and Islamist forces. Professor Dallmayr argues that Islam and democracy are not necessarily or inevitably compatible, but that they can be rendered compatible through creative and constructive engagement and interpretation. A broad-based internal dialogue needs to take place to determine how political Islam will feature in societies that have clearly demonstrated an eagerness for democratic practices. The chapter cautions that a middle ground must be maintained. While it is important to focus upon local experiences, it is essential to also embrace some of the institutional benefits of the Western world. Reaction to Western globalism can lead to a harsh nativistic backlash or even radicalism, which is equally futile. The chapter quotes Gandhi, who said, "The means and the ends have to be consistent. That is, democracy can only be established democratically and not through the kind of violence that we see today." The challenge is to reconcile diverse sectors of society with the objective of building a shared vision of modernity. The West can contribute to this vision by overcoming its impulse to homogenize or orientalize or control the other. The chapter makes the case that the Arab Spring may yet turn out to be a spring, but that the nature of that spring needs to be determined by Arab societies and on their own watch. Institution building is a long-term process, so we cannot judge the Arab Spring on a seasonal basis. This brings me to the case of Iran. In my presentation last year, I said that the West could encourage Iran's development by acknowledging that the Islamic Republic of Iran has no precedent in modern history, and that it is very much a work in progress. 1 year later, we see the amount of progress that Iran has achieved. In his address to the United Nations General Assembly, President Obama mentioned Iran 26 times, more than he did any other country. While the Iranian and American presidents did not meet at the United Nations General Assembly, Obama ended up making an historic phone call to President Rouhani, which I consider as good as any handshake. There is renewed hope in rapprochement. The prospect of a US-Iran thaw shows just how dated and futile the clash of civilizations narrative really is. We all know that the discursive field has an important impact on political praxis. And this chapter makes an urgent plea for a new discourse that cultivates new intercivilizational bonds, this time grounded in the active engagement and participations of cultures and peoples on the ground. The first step in uprooting this clash regime is a meaningful dialogue, a dialogue that is not just about talking, but about listening, or what Professor Dahlmeier refers to as the great art of deep listening, without prejudgment or the impulse to dominate. The road to improved relations between the US and Iran will be rocky, with 34 years of mistrust and suspicion. This chapter offers the intellectual insights and the conceptual tools policymakers and practitioners need in order to tear down the wall of mistrust brick by brick. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.